The chick that had been standing on Zhou Wen's shoulder suddenly spat out a golden flame that sprayed onto the black-armored, white-haired ghost's palm. When the golden flame touched the white-haired ghost's palm, it was as if a spark had encountered gasoline. It immediately ignited, and the ghastly hand caught fire. Good bird. Zhou Wen was overjoyed as he turned around and continued fleeing. Although the chick was magical, it had not long been born. Its level was too low now, so no matter how powerful its flames were, it would probably not be able to burn the black-armored, white-haired ghost to death. Indeed, the black gas emitted by the black-armored, white-haired ghost surged out, extinguishing the golden flames that engulfed his palm. His charred palm also rapidly recovered amidst the black gases, and his eyes showed anger as he chased again. What a haunting presence. Zhou Wen suddenly felt that at times, people really couldn't believe in superstitions. Ever since he had the bamboo blade, his luck had really deteriorated significantly. On this return trip, a new dimensional zone had appeared out of nowhere. There were even creatures that had broken out of containment, and they were unlucky enough to encounter them. Truth Listener and Banana Fairy rushed over to help Zhou Wen fend off the black-armored, white-haired ghost. Zhou Wen had also pushed Dragon Gate Fairy skill to its limits, hoping to escape the calamity. However, the black-armored, white-haired ghost had extremely high intelligence. He already knew that Truth Listener's and Banana Fairy's weakness was that their levels weren't high, so he ignored them. He sent them flying and continued targeting Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen kept ordering Ghost Bride to fight, but all she did was tremble as she slowly floated towards the black-armored, white-haired ghost. Clearly, she was horrified. Zhou Wen dodged in the air like an eagle several times, but he failed to completely dodge the black-armored, white-haired ghost's palm attacks. He was just seconds from having his neck grabbed. Seeing his furious gaze, Zhou Wen had no doubt that he would snap his neck. After I return, I'll definitely stay at home and game in peace. I won't come out again no matter what, Zhou Wen thought to himself as he prepared to activate his Sigh of the King. Although the Sigh of the King was potent, his body couldn't withstand such immense power. Furthermore, it was unknown if it was effective against the black-armored, white-haired ghost, but now, using it meant a last-ditch effort. If his attack failed, death was certain for him. The white-haired ghost dodged the flames spewed out by the chick. Just as it was about to grab Zhou Wen, a bolt of lightning suddenly descended from the sky and struck the white-haired ghost's head. It was Li Xuan who cleaved down with the Thunder God's sword. The white-haired ghost frowned slightly. He moved his body sideways and flipped his hand, sending the ghastly gases to blast Li Xuan and his sword away. Bam! Li Xuan's body slammed into the ground paved with stones, shattering the area. Li Xuan. Zhou Wen cleaved at the white-haired ghost while shouting. Li Xuan did a backflip from the rubble and charged at the white-haired ghost again, his Thunder God sword weighing him down. The white-haired ghost's figure flashed as he grabbed the bamboo blade with one hand and grabbed the Thunder God sword with the other. He violently flung Zhou Wen and Li Xuan to the ground. As gravel flew, Zhou Wen felt his face deform from being smashed. It was possible that his bones were fractured as blood gushed out from his nose. Li Xuan's condition wasn't any better as he crashed into the stony earth. The white-haired ghost's body descended and its feet were just about to step on both of their heads. Bam! Lai rushed over and kicked the white-haired ghost in the chest, sending him flying backward. Zhou Wen didn't hesitate any further as he channeled the Sigh of the King. Instantly, the strange power blasted out like a volcanic eruption. A beam of light descended on Zhou Wen. Li Xuan and company couldn't see the shadow, but Zhou Wen could sense that it was a woman, but he couldn't see her clearly. Terrifying power instantly filled Zhou Wen's entire body, making him feel like he could blast through everything. He was unwilling to waste any more time since the Sigh of the King's power only grew stronger. If too much time passed, the power might explode his body. Zhou Wen had to finish off the Ghost King before his body crumbled. Seeing the Ghost King charge at him again, Zhou Wen didn't hesitate to use Transcendent Flying Immortal. His body transformed into a lightning flash as he faced the black-armored, white-haired ghost. Crack! The bamboo blade slashed at the Ghost King's black armor once again, tearing open a deep rift. The black gas in it immediately surged out like a fountain. The black-armored, white-haired ghost's expression changed. His figure flashed like a ghost and disappeared into thin air. The subsequent attacks of Transcendent Flying Immortal missed due to the target suddenly disappearing. When the black-armored, white-haired ghost appeared again, it was already tens of meters away. Its trajectory didn't show, as though it had teleported over. Zhou Wen felt the power in his body turn increasingly violent. Without any hesitation, he used Transcendent Flying Immortal again. Originally, with his primordial energy, he could only use Transcendent Flying Immortal once before being enervated. However, with the Sigh of the King, Zhou Wen felt that he could use Transcendent Flying Immortal countless times. He didn't need to worry about overexerting his primordial energy, as though his body had infinite primordial energy. This feeling made Zhou Wen excited and extremely worried. He was like a baby swinging a sledgehammer. He could hurt himself at any moment due to his lack of power. His body's strength was insufficient to control the Sigh of the King. Transcendent Flying Immortal streaked across the sky instantly and appeared in front of the black-armored, white-haired ghost. However, his figure phased away and vanished once again. It made Zhou Wen unable to sense his aura, preventing him from locking onto it. This Transcendent Flying Immortal missed again. Zhou Wen's expression changed slightly as his body showed signs of overexertion. If he couldn't quickly finish off the white-haired ghost soon, he would probably implode. However, the white-haired ghost possessed a technique that was similar to teleportation. No matter how strong or fast he was, it was useless if he couldn't touch the white-haired ghost. When the white-haired ghost appeared again, Li Xuan charged forward and slashed at its head with the Thunder God's sword. The white-haired ghost was somewhat afraid of Zhou Wen's strength, but he thought nothing of Li Xuan. With a slight blink, he dodged Li Xuan's Thunder God sword and pressed Li Xuan's head to the ground with one hand. Bam! Rocks flew everywhere as Li Xuan's head crashed into a huge crater on the ground. Blood splattered out along with the rubble. Zhou Wen was alarmed. This strike had probably crushed Li Xuan's head. However, just as the white-haired ghost was about to retract his hand, Li Xuan suddenly grabbed his arm with both hands and leapt up. He clung tightly to the white-haired ghost and shouted at Zhou Wen, "Kill him." Article 232 of 1597. Zhou Wen didn't hesitate. With transcendent flying immortal, he traversed more than 10 meters in an instant and slashed his bamboo blade at the white-haired ghost like a bolt of lightning. The black gas exploded from the white-haired ghost's body, causing Li Xuan's blood to spray. He didn't know how many bones had been broken, but he refused to release his tight grip. Realizing that he couldn't shake Li Xuan off, the white-haired ghost tried to teleport with Li Xuan. However, Alai, who had rushed over, hugged his other leg. The ghost was clearly much slower attempting to teleport with the two of them, allowing Zhou Wen to discover the secret of his teleportation. It wasn't teleportation at all, it was just a fast-moving art, but because it was so fast, it looked like it was an instant transmission. Li Xuan risked his life to hold him back, and with Alai joining, his speed immediately slowed down, allowing Zhou Wen to see the white-haired ghost's trajectory clearly. Transcendent flying immortal moved like lightning as they intertwined and slashed at the black-armored, white-haired ghost. The extremely hard armor was cleaved apart by Zhou Wen's redoubtable strength as if it was tofu as cracks appeared one after another. Large amounts of black smoke spewed out from the cracks in his armor, and soon, his body appeared close to tearing apart. However, a strange scene happened at that moment. The black-armored, white-haired ghost gave a long roar as it enveloped the entire land that was the Nether Realm. The white-robed ghosts and red-dressed female ghosts turned into streams of ghost aura that surged towards him. As there were too many ghosts around him, large amounts of ghostly aura surged into his body, quickly restoring the damage to his body. The armor that was on the brink of collapse was stabilized. Zhou Wen knew that this wasn't going well. His body was almost at its limits. If this strike couldn't kill the black-armored white-haired ghost, he still had a high chance of killing him by using transcendent flying immortal again. However, his body would probably not be able to withstand it either. He would probably implode while using transcendent flying immortal. Just as Zhou Wen was lamenting the turn of events, Ghost Bride beside him let out a scream as she emitted a red glow. In the domain of the black-armored, white-haired ghost, her ghostly aura was also sucked away, preventing her from escaping. Finally, she unleashed all her potential. Although it was said to be all her potential, there was only one talent skill that she had never used. It was also the Jinx's husband's skill that he had no idea how to use. When the red glow radiated outwards, Zhou Wen and company didn't feel anything despite being illuminated by the red light. The black-armored, white-haired ghost was also illuminated by the red light. Immediately, the ghostly aura in his body was thrown into chaos. The ghostly aura that had been sucked into his body to heal it turned chaotic. Not only did it not repair his body, it even affected his own ghostly aura. Die. Zhou Wen released all his strength as the remaining half of Transcendent Flying Immortal was unleashed with even more terrifying might. It transformed into bolts of lightning that meshed together, striking the black-armored, white-haired ghost. Bam! The black-armored, white-haired ghost's body was shattered as the black armor was scattered everywhere. The ghostly aura in his body also exploded, sending Li Xuan and Alai flying. Zhou Wen retracted the power of Sai of the King and landed back on the ground. He lost his balance and fell to the ground. His skin was crimson red, a result of his blood vessels and meridians bursting. Under such immense pressure, all his bones would have fractured. If he had delayed a little while longer, he would have been killed by his life providence without needing the black-armored, white-haired ghost to do the honors. Li Xuan, Alai, are you alright? Zhou Wen struggled to stand up, but it was to no avail no matter how hard he tried. His bones were fractured and he couldn't stand the pain even if he didn't move. Any movement made it excruciating. Meanwhile, Alai helped Li Xuan up from the rubble. I'm fine. Li Xuan's condition isn't too good. I won't die. Li Xuan was covered in blood and his face was indiscernible, making him look extremely terrifying. With his powerful recovery abilities, he still didn't show any signs of improvement, proof of his serious injuries. They had just said a few words when their expressions turned nasty. They were already unable to continue fighting, but the red-dressed female ghosts suddenly surrounded them. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws as if they wanted to skin them alive. If this were in the past, Zhou Wen and company wouldn't have been afraid of the red-dressed female ghosts. No matter how many of them blocked their path, they could still charge out. But now, 3.5 of the 4 were equivalent to trash. They were not combat fit. More critically, they didn't even have the ability to escape. They could only stand their ground and await death. I never expected that I, Li Xuan, would die in the hands of a female ghost. Alright, dying in the hands of a beautiful female ghost is better than being eaten by those ugly beasts. Li Xuan also knew that he was unlikely to survive today, but he didn't feel any fear. He looked up and said to Zhou Wen, Old Zhou, I'm afraid you and I are both going to hell. When we go to hell, remember me. Don't forget me. When the time comes, let's wreak havoc in hell. All right. Zhou Wen also knew that there was no way they could survive this ordeal as he nodded in response. Ah Lai sighed softly. It's a pity I still haven't remembered what happened in the past. Zhang Yuzi hobbled towards Zhou Wen and company with her injured legs, but she collapsed to the ground. Only Zhou Wen's pets were still fighting, but the red-dressed female ghosts were like an unending tidal wave. With the opening the red-dressed female ghosts detected, they lunged over and threw the four into despair. Suddenly, a beam of light flashed as the heads of the red-dressed female ghosts flew into the air. At the same time, a figure appeared in front of them. Brother Sheng, you aren't dead. Li Xuan was overjoyed when he saw the person. It was In Sheng. However, when he saw In Sheng's appearance, Li Xuan's expression turned odd. He saw that In Sheng's clothes were ironed and his shirt was clean and white. Even his hair was neat and tidy. There was no messy hair and there was a smile on his face. He did not look like he had gone through an intense battle. Furthermore, it was clearly very strenuous for him to kill the ghosts previously, but this time, this strike had managed to behead dozens of red-dressed female ghosts. This was clearly different from his previous performance. Don't tell me you're bluffing. Li Xuan asked with widened eyes. The others looked at In Sheng as well, but In Sheng said with a smile, didn't I mention that I would take you to a few dimensional zones for training? This yin-yang ghost world that just appeared is one of them. I originally thought that I would save you when you were on the brink of death, but I never expected that you could actually kill Ghost King. You did pretty well. Don't you feel a sense of achievement? Li Xuan did not say a word as he showed In Sheng his middle finger. He suddenly understood why many people in Luang called In Sheng the devil's adjutant. And Sheng wasn't angry either. He played with the dagger in his hand and casually killed the red-dressed female ghosts until they fled in fear, no longer daring to lunge forward again. He walked to the spot where Ghost King had died and picked up something before stuffing it into Zhou Wen's hand. Young Master Wen, this is your spoils of war. It's very meaningful. The experience gained from life and death is something that no amount of wealth can compare with. Zhou Wen didn't have the strength to speak. He received the primordial energy skill crystal that emitted black gas and flipped In Sheng off as well. Article 233 of 1597. I should have realized it long ago. With Ah Sheng's meticulousness, why would he take us on such a dangerous path? Besides, he's the one who led us here. Zhou Wen shook his head slightly. He was glad that Ah Sheng wasn't an enemy while also warning himself. This time, In Sheng was not their enemy. But if their enemy treated them this way, how would they deal with it? Zhou Wen could only warn himself that he had to be more careful in the future. However, he didn't lose trust in anyone because of this matter. At the very least, Li Xuan and Ah Lai had chosen to fight alongside him in the life and death situation instead of running for their lives. Between trust and distrust, Zhou Wen knew that he needed to find a balance. There was one thing In Sheng was right about. A battle that threatened his life was far more memorable than Zhou Wen gaming. Some things were difficult to understand unless it was a life and death situation. The penalty of death in-game ultimately failed to reach the bottom of his heart. On his way back, Zhou Wen was fiddling with the Ghost King's primordial energy skill crystal in his hand. And Sheng told Zhou Wen that the yin-yang world had only appeared recently and it was difficult to kill a Ghost King. In fact, a Ghost King was very rare as well, not something that would be encountered every time. Therefore, up to now, very few primordial energy skill crystal had dropped. The one in Zhou Wen's hand was the first. Even In Sheng didn't know what primordial energy skill the Ghost King would drop. And Sheng also said that he had watched Zhou Wen and company's entire battle process. If it wasn't for the strange powers of Ghost Bride restraining the Ghost King, the outcome would have been completely different. The restrictions Ghost Bride had on the Ghost King were too great. It was a very effective weapon against him. If Zhou Wen was interested and had the time, he could use Ghost Bride to earn money here in the future. There would definitely be people who would hire Zhou Wen's Ghost Bride. It was also In Sheng's first time finding out the abilities of Ghost Bride. In fact, he had never seen a Ghost Bride before, and this was also his first time seeing her. Not long after the yin-yang world was discovered, all In Sheng knew about were the red-dressed female ghosts, white-robed female ghosts, and the Ghost King. However, In Sheng had the ability to control dimensional creatures like ghosts. Therefore, even if two Ghost Kings appeared at the same time, he was confident that he could protect Zhou Wen and company. That was why he brought them here to experience the sensation of life and death. At the same time, he wanted Zhou Wen to experience the dimensional creatures of the ghost type. Otherwise, he wouldn't be mentally prepared when facing them in the future. What kind of primordial energy skill is it? Zhou Wen didn't directly absorb it. It was an epic primordial energy skill crystal, so directly absorbing it was too dangerous. Zhou Wen planned on absorbing it in-game after returning to the college. Nothing happened on the way back, as In Sheng successfully got them to Luang. When they passed by Eastern Capital, Zhang Yuzi got out of the car and thanked them. She even added them as friends on social media. Did everything go well on the way? And Tianzuo asked casually as he read the documents in the military camp. It went well, and Sheng answered. That's good. And Tianzuo frowned slightly as he continued reading the documents. However, after waiting for a while, he still didn't hear Insheng speak. And Tianzuo looked up at Insheng, who was standing by the side, and asked, "Don't you have anything to say? Overseer, do you want to know about my matters? Or do you want to know about Zhou Wen's matters? If it's the former, you can feel at ease. I was very safe the entire journey," Insheng said with a smile. "Humph, you are becoming more and more presumptuous." And Tianzuo's face sank as he reprimanded Insheng before continuing. "I heard that he caused quite a stir in Holy City. I'm afraid he will bring trouble to our Yin family. In terms of the ability to stir up trouble, he definitely can't compare to you, Overseer. Besides, even if he were to cause trouble, the Yin family would be the one causing trouble for him, don't you think so?" And Sheng blinked as he spoke. "Ah Sheng, have you been living too comfortably recently? Do you want to go on a training expedition at the front lines?" And Tianzuo put down the documents in his hand and glared at Insheng. "Overseer, calm down. I'm just afraid that you won't be happy if I say something that I shouldn't say," Insheng said meekly. "I'm very unhappy right now," said Tianzuo with a cold expression. And Sheng wasn't afraid as he blinked and said, "All right, I'll tell you then. If you hear something you don't like, don't be angry. Do you believe that I'll throw you to the chess mountain to guard it?" And Tianzuo said, "If I were to guard the mountain pass, who else would know your preferences? They wouldn't even know what tea you like to drink or the ratio of warm water to use. I'm afraid you wouldn't be able to get used to it." And Sheng smiled as he made tea for Tianzuo. "Do you think I'm apprehensive about dealing with you just because of this? Do you believe that I can find a more capable adjutant to replace you tomorrow and throw you to guard the mountain pass?" With that said, Tianzuo laughed. "Yes." And Sheng placed the teacup in front of Tianzuo before saying seriously, "You should already know about Zhou Wen's situation in Holy City. So what are you asking about?" "Your evaluation of him." And Tianzuo took a sip of tea and slowly said, "Like I said, I was afraid you would be unhappy," and Sheng said, "Speak." And Tianzuo only said one word. "I think he's even stronger than you were back then," and Sheng said. And Tianzuo immediately put down his teacup and glared fiercely at Insheng. "Don't use those exaggerated words. No matter how well you praise him, he will not catch my eye." And Sheng said, "You said that you wouldn't be angry. If you want to hear lies, I'll just do as you wish. That punk Zhou Wen is extremely weak. He was capable of defeating 6 families and Lance not because he's strong but because the children of the 6 families are too disappointing. Zhou Wen merely enjoys undeserved fame. The reason he could kill the Ghost King is because of his sheer luck." "Ah Sheng, you seem to think highly of him." And Tianzuo narrowed his eyes and asked Insheng. "Izuo narrow. I just feel that Zhou Wen is just what Mr. Ouyang said. He's someone that can be trusted," Insheng said seriously. "Is that so?" "I don't think so," said Tianzuo indifferently as he picked up the document and read it again. And Sheng knew Tianzuo's habits, so when he saw him pick up the document, he didn't say another word. All he could do was sigh inwardly. And Tianzuo's temper was the same as Zhou Wen's. It was useless for anyone to say anything once he had made up his mind. Now, Sheng only hoped that the two of them wouldn't become enemies in the future. Otherwise, it would be a disaster. After Zhou Wen returned to his dorm, he took the mysterious phone to snap the Ghost King's primordial energy skill crystal. However, he received the notification that his stats were inadequate. Zhou Wen took a look and realized that the Ghost King crystal was the same as the mutated fairy crystal from before. They both had stat and primordial energy art requirements. The stat requirement was the same as Transcendent Flying Immortal 21 points of speed. As for the primordial energy art, it required Yin-type primordial energy art. The few primordial energy arts that Zhou Wen was proficient in now were more neutral. The ancient Imperial Sutra was clearly more inclined to Yang, and a Buddhist-type primordial energy art like the Small Perfection of Wisdom Sutra was definitely not Yin-type. As for the First Order of Chaos, it had yet to advance to the legendary stage. The only one left was the Godfiend era. Zhou Wen didn't have much confidence while switching his primordial energy art to the Godfiend era. All he wanted to do was give it a try. After all, the Godfiend era hadn't appeared to be Yin-type in nature. At best, it could only be considered a little more feminine. To his surprise, the mysterious phone successfully captured the Ghost King's crystal into the game and successfully absorbed it once he switched to Godfiend era. Absorbed Ghost King crystal. Attained primordial energy skill, Ghost Steps. Article 234 of 1597. Ghost Steps, a moving technique of a ghost with a mysterious, unpredictable effect. Zhou Wen tested Ghost Steps and discovered that it was a movement technique that resembled the Ghost King's instant transmission. Ghost Steps wasn't true teleportation but an instant burst of extraordinary speed. Due to the sudden burst of speed and suddenness, it looked like one vanished. Previously, with Li Xuan and Lai holding back the Ghost King, Zhou Wen had seen his trajectory due to the lowering of his speed. Although it wasn't true teleportation, it was already enough to pleasantly surprise him. The speed at which the Ghost Steps erupted in an instant was too astonishing. Now, Zhou Wen was only at the legendary stage, so the speed attained from using Ghost Steps exceeded some at the epic stage. However, Ghost Steps was similar to that of Transcendent Flying Immortal. They had higher primordial energy requirements, so even Ghost King himself was unable to continuously use Ghost Steps. Zhou Wen was the same, although he could switch to the Dao body to increase his frequency. Typical primordial energy was impossible to support ghost steps consumption. If I were to maintain the Psi of the King state with infinite ghost steps and transcendent flying immortal, I'm afraid no one at the same level as me could withstand such terrifying attacks. What a pity. Although Zhou Wen had such thoughts, he knew that it was unlikely he could accomplish that in a short period of time. The next morning, Zhou Wen took some gifts to meet Wang Mingyuan and his seniors. He also asked Wang Mingyuan about the ivory pendant. The ivory pendant emitting a chill to resist the flames of the sun in the Sun God Temple had clearly made it extraordinary. Wang Mingyuan casually said, "That's not ivory. It's a type of tooth I found in Dragon's Well. As for what kind of creature it is, it's hard to say for now. I've carved a total of 4 pendants. One for each one of you. Consider it a memento." Wang Mingyuan didn't care about such worldly possessions. Although he knew that these teeth pendants had magical uses, he did not take them to heart. Zhou Wen asked him some questions regarding combat techniques and Wang Mingyuan answered them casually. After Zhou Wen consulted him on Lance's combat tactics, Wang Mingyuan told him, "It's not that combat tactics can't be used, but the average person's reaction can't reach that level of thinking in battle. Therefore, most combat tactics are inflexible. It doesn't change on the spot in a targeted manner. A completely inflexible combat tactic is easily seen through by others, so it has to be used appropriately unless one's thoughts can reach the standard of a supercomputer, allowing one to react in almost every way possible. Otherwise, it can only be used as support. Don't deliberately seek out such tactics." Zhou Wen naturally couldn't reach such a level, so he chose a more normal path, a path that could match both reality and virtuality together in a versatile manner. By being versatile, faking out the enemy was a competition with the enemy on a psychological and physical level. Although this gave the enemy some time to think, he too would have the time to think and see who was better. Zhou Wen learned from Wang Mingyuan. Zhang Zia and Zhang Yan were in the lab every day while Hui Haifeng often went out. He was considered the most active one of Wang Mingyuan's disciples. The more Zhou Wen learned from Wang Mingyuan, the more he found Wang Mingyuan's knowledge unfathomably deep. Furthermore, he had a mild personality and wouldn't force him to learn anything, nor would he assign him to take a particular path. He was like a lamp that illuminated the world ahead of him. As for the path an individual wanted to take, they could choose it themselves. The sun was scorching, and the familiar cries of cicadas made the summer feel even hotter. It was rare for Wang Mingyuan to take the 4 of them to a classroom. He borrowed a projector and explained some relatively advanced theoretical knowledge and equipment to Zhou Wen and company. Wang Mingyuan was not only a researcher of dimensional forces, but he was also very accomplished in science. Zhou Wen wasn't too interested in technology, so he sat quietly at the back and played games. Hui Haifeng listened attentively, but it wasn't clear if he was really interested or had other plans. Zhang Zia was lying on the table sleeping, but the cicadas chirping irritated him so much that he couldn't fall asleep no matter what. He lay there weakly, his eyes staring blankly at the blackboard. Zhang Yan supported his face with one hand and looked out of the window, as if he was looking at the cicadas on the tree outside and with great interest. Wang Fei walked to the door and peeked inside the classroom through the gap. She wanted to know how Zhou Wen's progress under Wang Mingyuan's teachings. Upon seeing this, she couldn't help but feel a little depressed. She thought to herself, Uncle Mingyuan's personality is just too nice. He spoiled these guys. How can he let them off like this? Although she had such thoughts, Wang Fei didn't enter the room to say anything. Firstly, this was Wang Mingyuan's class, so she had to respect him. Secondly, Wang Fei knew that reprimanding a person like Zhou Wen was useless. Furthermore, Wang Fei had also heard what Zhou Wen had done in Holy City. Although the 6 families had started a news lockdown, the news couldn't be kept under wraps forever. Wang Fei was Ouyang Lan's best friend. She had long known from Ouyang Lan, and the tone she used to flaunt him made Wang Fei feel contempt. Forget it. It's already very difficult for this fellow to find an opponent among his peers. It's unlikely that I can come up with very good ideas to encourage him to continue working hard for the time being. I'll let him be smug for now. After some thought, Wang Fei decided to ignore Zhou Wen for the time being. After all, Zhou Wen was only a first-year freshman. Compared to the other students, Zhou Wen's improvement was extremely fast. However, after Wang Fei returned, she still raised the difficulty of her homework missions. This led her students crying foul. The students never expected that their homework missions became harder because of Zhou Wen. Wang Lu walked out of the building with the baby tiger and, when she saw Zhou Wen return after class, she went forward to greet him. Zhou Wen, are you interested in heading to Dragon Gate Grotto to hunt dimensional creatures? I'm actually caught up with something. I'm afraid I don't have time, Zhou Wen said. What else do you do? Isn't it just gaming? Wang Lu curled her lips, displeased with Zhou Wen's perfunctory answer. That's right. There's a part of the game I can't get past. I wish to make a breakthrough as soon as possible, Zhou Wen said with a nod. With ghost steps in Transcendent Flying Immortal, Zhou Wen planned on attempting to kill the golden flying ant again or see what was inside the white cocoon. He had not been able to raise his primordial energy and constitution to 21 all this time, so all he could do was place his target on something tangible first. Gaming nerd. Wang Lu puffed up her cheeks and left. Zhou Wen returned to his room and switched on his phone. He chose to enter the ant nest and headed straight for Ant City. Article 235 of 1597. When the blood-colored avatar arrived in Ant City again, it no longer acted as cowardly as before. Zhou Wen's pets could easily resolve the ant horde without him needing to do anything. After clearing all the ordinary ants, Zhou Wen took his pet to the ant nest at the apex. The golden flying ant charged straight out. Its speed was extremely fast, even faster than the Ghost King when not using ghost steps. Its feet shot out a terrifying golden beam like a blade. Zhou Wen had allowed the Saber Shield Knight to lead the charge, using his shield to block the golden beam. However, he could only block once. Although he had used a shield primordial energy skill, the shield cracked from the strikes. If another blow landed, the shield would definitely be destroyed. The silver-winged flying ant attacked from the side but was instantly killed by the beam shot from the golden flying ant's eyes. Its wings and body were penetrated. Truth Listener attacked from the flank but was taken down by the golden beam. Immediately, it retreated with a tragic cry. Its stats couldn't resist the golden flying ant's strength. It was not as powerful as when it faced the Ghost King. Even its fur revealed a wound. However, this was already considered very strong. Ordinary legendary creatures would have been killed instantly. With the banana fan in hand, Zhou Wen fanned at the golden flying ant and instantly sent it flying backward. Taking this opportunity, Zhou Wen used the Dragon Gate Fairy skill and charged towards the white cocoon. It was still difficult for him to kill the golden flying ant alone, so he decided to first see what was inside the cocoon. The golden flying ant's speed was extremely fast as it instantly charged back. A golden beam shot out of its eyes, trying to kill Zhou Wen on the spot. Zhou Wen stepped on the nest's wall and suddenly vanished, leaving the golden flying ant stunned. By the time Zhou Wen appeared again, he was already in front of the white cocoon. His palm struck the white cocoon in a bid to blast it apart. However, the strike that was powered by golden palm made Zhou Wen feel as though his palm had struck a spring. After the cocoon slightly caved in, it immediately bounced up, sending Zhou Wen flying. The golden flying ant flashed over to him and the blood-colored avatar that was sent flying back was instantly killed by the golden beam. The game screen turned black. My full-strength strike failed to deal any damage to the white cocoon. Zhou Wen was slightly surprised as his curiosity towards the white cocoon increased. Unfortunately, there's no way to bring the bamboo blade in-game. Otherwise, it would be much easier to use bamboo blade in-game to split open the cocoon. Zhou Wen wanted to try it again, but the antelope was displeased. It ran over and bit Zhou Wen's clothes as it pulled him out. Alright, I got it. Zhou Wen helplessly put away his cell phone and took the antelope out to eat. During the period Zhou Wen wasn't around, he had requested Wang Lu to take care of the antelope. Zhou Wen had originally planned on getting Wang Lu to give it some fresh vegetables. However, who knew that after Zhou Wen returned, this fellow insisted on heading to the school's cafeteria to eat steak every day. You are an antelope. You eat grass, alright. Zhou Wen cursed inwardly as he felt a little depressed. He could have just fed it some vegetables without spending much money like in the beginning, but after Wang Le's feeding for a few days, the fellow insisted on eating steak daily. If it wasn't for Zhou Wen's robbery of many companion eggs on his trip and his plans on selling them for a good price, it was unlikely that he could afford to rear it. It's true that one is marked by the company one keeps. I definitely can't let my pets have anything to do with Wang Lu in the future. Zhou Wen subconsciously touched the chick on his shoulder. After the meal, Zhou Wen planned on selling all the companion eggs he had on hand. The money he obtained could be invested in Huang Zhi's game. It wasn't likely to be a problem to sell so many companion eggs for 1 or 2 million. He definitely would have some money for the investment. There was a trading market in the school, so students could purchase or sell the companion eggs they obtained there. Zhou Wen scanned the companion eggs he had obtained with his mysterious phone and after seeing their types and attributes, he labeled them. Each companion egg was labeled with its species and price and nothing else. Zhou Wen began setting up a stall for the first time. When he arrived at the market, the place was bleak. There was almost no one there, other than 2 people. As most of the students were at the mortal stage, they were unable to use legendary companion eggs. Furthermore, mortal companion eggs were extremely rare. Therefore, typical students would never come here. Those who came were basically the top students of the school. Typically, students who could advance to the legendary stage by now were students with good family backgrounds. They didn't usually lack companion eggs, so they wouldn't go through the trouble of selling the companion eggs they obtained. Therefore, Zhou Wen looked at the empty market and began suspecting if his companion eggs could be sold. Isn't this Zhou Wen? Are you here to buy a companion egg? Come and see my companion eggs. They are all excellent grade. After the only 2 stall owners in the market saw Zhou Wen, one of them, a senior named Li Yu, immediately had his eyes light up as though he was a wolf seeing its prey. He nearly pounced at him. The other person who had set up a stall was actually Huang Ji. Senior, why are you setting up a stall here? Zhou Wen asked Huang Ji. My lack of money. What else can it be? Huang Ji said embarrassedly. By the way, senior, didn't you say you were going to the Holy Land? Why didn't I see you? Zhou Wen recalled how Huang Ji had mentioned that he was going to the Holy Land, but when Zhou Wen was there, he didn't manage to see Huang Ji, despite especially looking out for him. You didn't see me, but I saw you. You were impressive. Huang Ji gave a thumbs up. I was compelled. Did you obtain anything from your trip to the Holy Land? Zhou Wen asked again. I did gain something. I obtained a god power crystal, but that item can't be exchanged for money, so I'm still short of cash, Huang Ji said as he sized up Zhou Wen and said with a smile, you seem to have obtained quite a number of companion eggs in the Holy Land. You should be able to sell them for quite a bit, right? Do you plan on investing in my game? Once I sell them for money, I'll immediately invest in your game, Zhou Wen said with certainty. However, he was somewhat puzzled. Huang Ji had actually said that he had obtained a god power crystal and knew that Zhou Wen had robbed many companion eggs. That meant that he had likely gone to the Holy Land, but Zhou Wen was puzzled why he hadn't seen him. Then what are you waiting for? Hurry up and set up the stall. Huang Ji's eyes lit up. Zhou Wen set up the stall beside Huang Ji, but other than the three of them sitting in a row, there was no one to be seen. The trio looked at each other without saying a word. Having nothing to do, Li Yu was given a fright when he saw the 4 companion eggs Zhou Wen had placed out for sale. Zhou Wen, isn't your label fake? Isn't a companion beast like the broken-winged angel something only found in the West District? Also, this Cyclops behemoth is unique to the West District, isn't it? This Ice Frost Bear is something from the North District, right? We don't typically get to see any of this over here. Article 236 of 1597. The companion eggs Zhou Wen had snatched were legendary companion eggs which were specially prepared for sale by the various major merchants. Most of them were unique to certain regions and were very few in number. They were considered rather rare types that were scattered all across the globe. Even if one went to a large companion egg store in Holy City, it would be very difficult to see so many different types from so many different regions. You'll know if it's true if you buy one, Zhou Wen said. That's fine, but isn't your price too high? Li Yu glanced at Zhou Wen's bid. The broken-winged angel was worth 188,000. Typical legendary companion eggs could be bought at 10 to 20,000. The rare ones went for about 70 to 80,000. Only excellent grade eggs could exceed 100,000. I referenced the price on the internet. It's non-negotiable, Zhou Wen said. He had checked the prices on the internet, but due to the frequent appearance of dimensional zones across the world, traffic was greatly obstructed. The supply chain had become slow and unsafe, and there were often severe losses of goods. Therefore, the scale of internet transactions was gradually shrinking. If he couldn't sell it in the college, Zhou Wen could only try his luck at Luang's market. If he still couldn't get a buyer, he could only sell it to merchants. If that happened, the price would be very low. Li Yu smacked his lips. Zhou Wen, I don't have the money to buy such things. However, if you try here, I'm afraid you won't be able to sell it either. Why don't we do it this way? Why don't you hand over your companion eggs to me for selling? I'll take a 10% commission for my hard work. Why will you be able to sell it if I can't sell it here? Zhou Wen looked at Li Yu with interest. Li Yu handed a business card to Zhou Wen. To be honest, I've already been accepted by the Royal Pet Store. Although I haven't graduated yet, I'm already an official employee there. As you can see, there's no one here. I'm only setting up a stall here due to the company's requirements. If your companion eggs are real, I can help you sell them through the company's channels. The prices will definitely be high on the premise that these companion eggs are definitely real. Unfortunately, most people didn't know of the battle in the Holy Land, nor did they know what Zhou Wen had done in Holy City. Otherwise, Li Yu wouldn't have suspected the authenticity of these companion eggs. There's no need. I'll just sell them by myself. After all, I have nothing to do. Zhou Wen knew that Li Yu was planning on doing a lossless business. The risk was all Zhou Wen's, but the profits had to be shared with Li Yu. Furthermore, Zhou Wen didn't know how much Li Yu would sell them for. However, Zhou Wen knew that the fellow wasn't reliable based on the name of the Royal Pet Store. Together with 3 other pet stores, it was known as one of the top 4 scammers in the league. They were well known to purchase at low prices and sell at high prices, and they liked to play cheap tricks. Zhou Wen wasn't too busy himself. He could gain while running a stall, so there was no rush. Let's do this. Since it's not easy to sell these companion eggs, why don't you sell them to me as a package deal? As long as you can guarantee their authenticity, I'll give you 80,000 each. 4 of them makes it 320,000. Let's round it off to 300,000. How about that? Li Yu added. Non-negotiable, Zhou Wen said as he gamed. This Ice Frost Bear is clearly too expensive. An ordinary Ice Frost Bear companion egg is only 70 to 80,000. Why are you pricing it at nearly 200,000? Li Yu pointed at the Frost Bear companion egg. It's worth every penny. Zhou Wen's Ice Frost Bear was indeed priced very high, but that was because he had seen its stats and knew that it was worth the price. If you do business like this, you won't even be able to sell it in the Luang market, much less here. Li Yu had never seen Zhou Wen's sales tactics before. He decided to wait and see. He believed he could buy Zhou Wen's companion eggs at low prices after Zhou Wen realized the cruel reality of the world. There were very few people in the market. Occasionally, students would come for Li Yu. From the looks of it, his identity as a Royal Pet Store employee wasn't fake. Occasionally, the student council would entrust him to sell the companion eggs they obtained from the dimensional zone. Although he didn't offer a high price, the benefit was that money could be directly received without going through the trouble of selling it themselves. However, the ones that were sold to Li Yu were mostly common companion eggs that were nothing spectacular. How about it? Did you see that? The students acknowledge me. The price is fair and honest. The price I gave you isn't low. Li Yu took another companion egg and flaunted it at Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen ignored him as he continued gaming. By the side, Huang Ji was also doing something on his laptop. His fingers were rapidly tapping on the keyboard, having no time to chat with Zhou Wen. Seeing that Zhou Wen was ignoring him, Li Yu couldn't help but mumble, "That's not the way to do business. You definitely won't make any sales." As he spoke, another person walked over. When Li Yu saw that person, his eyes lit up. "Gu Dian, you got another companion egg." Li Yu hurriedly went forward to welcome him warmly. When Zhou Wen heard Gu Dian's name, he looked up and indeed saw the devilish-looking man walk in. "How much can these companion eggs be exchanged for?" Gu Dian threw a bag in front of Li Yu. Li Yu hurriedly opened the bag and was overjoyed when he saw more than 10 companion eggs inside. As he appraised them, he said in delight, "This should be a golden warrior companion egg. Others will pay at most 5,000 to buy them out. On account of us being old friends, I'll give you 5,500 for it." Zhou Wen looked at the companion eggs with his cell phone and couldn't help but be astonished. Li Yu was indeed quite capable. His appraisal of the companion egg species was right on the money. However, the price he offered was nothing but a scam. It was basically less than a third of the market price. A golden warrior companion egg might only be an ordinary legendary, but it was an excellent pet for tanking. They were sold for rather high prices on the market. However, the price Li Yu offered was much lower than that of a typical legendary companion egg. He was truly unscrupulous. "Gu Dian, are you selling these companion eggs?" Zhou Wen asked Gu Dian. Gu Dian was ultimately a member of the Xuanwen Club despite only being recruited to make up the numbers. Zhou Wen didn't wish for him to be cheated right under his nose. A person like Gu Dian spent all day in the dimensional zones without even having a friend. He definitely wouldn't know the market prices, so Zhou Wen reckoned that he had been scammed by Li Yu in the past. "Yes," replied Gu Dian. "Since I'm also selling companion eggs, I'll sell it for you if you trust me," Zhou Wen said. "All right." Gu Dian grabbed his bag and placed it in front of Zhou Wen before turning to leave without a word. Li Yu was somewhat infuriated as he said to Zhou Wen with a cold expression, "Zhou Wen, that's quite an asshole thing to do. Don't you know the rules of doing business?" "I don't know much about business, but Gu Dian is a member of our club. I'm not breaking the rules by helping him sell them, right?" Zhou Wen said. "All right, let me watch you sell them here." Li Yu was in no hurry. He had to sell the companion eggs through the Royal Pet Store's channels. It was practically impossible to sell them here. Article 237 of 1597. Zhou Wen ignored Li Yu and wrote the name and price on Gu Dian's companion eggs before sitting behind his stall to continue gaming. Li Yu glanced at Zhou Wen's prices. One of the eggs was extremely expensive. "How dare you price a gatekeeper lion companion egg at 100,000? It's ridiculously high even for a retail price. It will be a miracle if you can sell it," thought Li Yu. Just as he was thinking about it, another person came to the market. This time, it was a young student who looked extremely handsome, like a movie star. When Li Yu saw this person, his eyes lit up as he went forward again. "Brother Luo Xuan, are you here to buy companion eggs? I recently obtained quite a number of good items." Luo Xuan went over to Li Yu's stall to take a look at the companion eggs, but when he saw Zhou Wen's stall, he couldn't help but take a look. He was immediately interested. "I'll take all 4 of them," Luo Xuan said as he pointed at the 4 companion eggs Zhou Wen had placed for sale. "Brother Luo, don't just look at the name. How high are the chances of us obtaining a companion egg like the broken-winged angel or the ice frost bear?" Although Li Yu didn't say that Zhou Wen's companion eggs were fake, it was obvious from his tone. Luo Xuan smiled and said, "A person like Zhou Wen wouldn't lie on such matters. Even if they're not fake, aren't they too expensive? If you really want them, I'll get the company to transfer some over for you in a few days. The ice frost bear is at most 100,000. Zhou Wen had ruined his business plans, so Li Yu didn't want Zhou Wen to have an easy life. Luo Xuan smiled at Zhou Wen and said, "Zhou Wen, can your companion eggs be cheaper?" "No, they're worth every penny. You can buy them for 100,000 elsewhere, but that's the price for mine," Zhou Wen said without looking up. "Brother Luo, look at his attitude. He's clearly trying to scam you," Li Yu said. Luo Xuan thought nothing of it as he directly transferred the money to Zhou Wen. "All right, I'll take all 4 of them. Help me wrap them up." "Sorry, I forgot to bring any bags. You'll have to hold them yourself." After receiving the payment, Zhou Wen realized that he didn't even have a plastic bag. Li Yu's face turned livid as he watched from the side. He thought to himself, Luo Xuan sure is silly and rich. He's buying those things just like that. This is really letting Zhou Wen luck out. Luo Xuan didn't mind. He opened his backpack and stuffed the 4 companion eggs inside. Then, he looked at the companion eggs placed on Zhou Wen's counter and asked in surprise, "Why is this gatekeeper lion companion egg so expensive?" The market price should be around 20,000, right? This is a mutated gatekeeper lion egg. It's no ordinary gatekeeper lion, Zhou Wen said. Mutated gatekeeper lion. Li Yu was slightly taken aback as he carefully looked at the companion egg, but he failed to notice anything amiss. It was identical to an ordinary gatekeeper lion egg. He couldn't help but sneer inwardly. It's true that Zhou Wen is very talented, and I admit that I'm inferior to you, but when it comes to the appraisal of companion eggs, it's my specialty. What I studied for 3 years wasn't for nothing. Even I can't tell the difference, but you can. What a joke. This is the first time I've heard of a mutated gatekeeper lion. What difference does it have from ordinary ones? Luo Xuan's interest was piqued. Zhou Wen said, mutated gatekeeper lions are quite rare. It's normal that you haven't heard of them. They have higher stats than the typical gatekeeper lion, and they have an additional lion roar as a skill. It's a relatively rare sonar wave attack. Just having this technique alone makes it worth more than 100,000. I never knew that. I'll buy it. Luo Xuan said extravagantly as he waved his hand, wanting to transfer the money. Brother Luo, I've heard of mutated gatekeeper lions, but they are very rarely produced. None of us have seen them before. However, I've heard that not every mutated gatekeeper lion has lion roar, so it's still probabilistic. Without the ability of a lion roar, there's almost no difference between a mutated gatekeeper lion and a normal one. No one knows if it's really mutated. Li Yu was speaking the truth, but he was also suspecting that Zhou Wen was selling an ordinary gatekeeper lion as a mutated gatekeeper lion. Luo Xuan looked at Zhou Wen, who said indifferently, I can only guarantee that this is a mutated gatekeeper lion egg. I can't guarantee anything else. When Li Yu heard Zhou Wen say that, he immediately beamed with joy. Only a fool would buy something like that with you saying that. I'll buy it. However, Luo Xuan waved his hand, causing Li Yu to be dumbfounded. His mouth was agape for a long time. He knew that Luo Xuan was rich, but he never expected him to be so rich. He was secretly depressed. If I had known that Luo Xuan was such a fool, I would have asked for higher prices in the past. Seeing that Luo Xuan no longer had any interest in the other companion eggs on Zhou Wen's counter, Li Yu hurriedly took out the few valuable companion eggs he had. Although they couldn't compare to Zhou Wen's ice frost bear and the rest, they were rare ones produced at the college. Brother Luo, this is a rare white-winged red-tail crane. Its skill is extremely rare and it is very rarely produced. I was lucky to acquire one. I spent 98,000 on it. For you, I'll charge you 110,000. After witnessing Luo Xuan's wealth, Li Yu automatically increased the price to a whole new level. Yes, not bad. Luo Xuan nodded slightly. It's good that you like it, brother. Do you want to pay by card or bank transfer? Li Yu was secretly delighted. I only brought so much money today. It's all spent. Perhaps next time, said Luo Xuan with a smile. Li Yu was somewhat dumbfounded. He felt depressed. Damn it, you can just swipe your card and not use your wallet. What do you mean by not bringing that much money today? Luo Xuan ignored Li Yu and took out the mutated gatekeeper lion egg. He directly injected his primordial energy and hatched it. When Li Yu saw Luo Xuan doing so, he couldn't help but nod inwardly. From the looks of it, Luo Xuan isn't really silly. By hatching the gatekeeper lion on the spot, he will definitely settle scores with Zhou Wen once he discovers that he has been fooled. Zhou Wen can't deny it even if he wants to. Li Yu folded his arms and waited for the development to play out. Gu Dian was the one who had brought the gatekeeper lion egg here. Even Gu Dian himself didn't mention anything about a mutated gatekeeper lion, and Li Yu couldn't tell, therefore, he refused to believe that Zhou Wen would be able to recognize a mutated gatekeeper lion. He believed that Zhou Wen was likely deliberately scamming Luo Xuan in a bid to earn more. Soon, Luo Xuan hatched the gatekeeper lion. A majestic stone lion appeared in front of him. Li Yu took a look and saw that it looked identical to an ordinary gatekeeper lion. It looked nothing like a mutated gatekeeper lion. Just as he was waiting to see Luo Xuan and Zhou Wen fall out, he suddenly heard Luo Xuan say, it's indeed a mutated gatekeeper lion. Apart from its speed, all its attributes are no less than 17. Lion roar is indeed excellent. Zhou Wen, if you have such good stuff in the future, contact me directly. Li Yu felt as if he was dreaming as he watched with his mouth agape as Luo Xuan and Zhou Wen added each other as friends. Article 238 of 1597. Chapter 238, Ever Victorious. To be honest, my family owns a pet store, but it naturally can't compare to a chain store like Royal Pet Store that covers the entire league. Our store is a small shop in Luong. In the future, if a companion egg is sold or if you want to buy a companion egg, you can look for me directly. Luo Xuan sent Zhou Wen a message. I still have some rare legendary companion eggs that are about the same as those 4 rare ones. What kind of prices would you pay for them? Zhou Wen replied to Luo Xuan. The two exchanged a few words with information, and after confirming the price, Zhou Wen immediately packed up and prepared to leave. The price Luo Xuan offered was rather fair and was close to the true value, therefore, Zhou Wen didn't wish to waste time here. He planned on selling Gu Dian's and his companion eggs to Luo Xuan. Zhou Wen. Just as Zhou Wen was about to pack up and leave, Li Yu called out to him. He turned to look at Li Yu. Li Yu hesitated for a moment before saying, how could you tell that it was a mutated gatekeeper lion? Is that very difficult? Zhou Wen asked in return before bidding farewell to Huang Ji. He carried the bag half filled with companion eggs and left the market. Li Yu was stunned for a while before he came back to his senses. He couldn't help but smile bitterly and say, if that isn't considered difficult, then what's the point of me studying for 3 years? Zhou Wen arrived at the spot he had agreed on with Luo Xuan and gave Gu Dian and his companion eggs to him. And without any bargaining, Luo Xuan transferred the money to Zhou Wen at the agreed price. Ignoring Gu Dian's portion, Zhou Wen had obtained more than 2 million. This was the first time he had received so much money. He felt like a nouveau riche. Are you interested in becoming an appraiser at my pet store after graduation? I can give you some shares, said Luo Xuan. I'm not interested in the appraising business. Zhou Wen thought for a moment before asking, do you have any legendary weapon-type companion beasts? The ones with extremely powerful destructive power, it's best if their destructive power can reach the epic stage. If someone were to ask that, I would definitely say no. In fact, I would even look down on him. However, since that's what you asked, I'll tell you that they exist, but they are very expensive, said Luo Xuan. How expensive? Zhou Wen was in desperate need of a weapon that could break through the white cocoon. The power of the banana fan was the wind. If it evolved to its limits, it could blow an entire mountain away. However, its power was not concentrated enough and its destructive power wasn't potent enough. This was incomparable to a single target skill. If one wanted to destroy something, heavy weapons were more practical. At the very least, they needed to be weapons like swords and sabers. Luo Xuan muttered to himself, I wonder if you have heard of a companion beast like Overlord Snake. It's a very rare companion beast and it has immense strength. It can be considered a top strength type companion beast at the legendary stage. Its companion form is a spear, and we give it a nickname, the Overlord Spear. After pausing for a moment, Luo Xuan continued, the Overlord Spear is considered top-notch among legendary weapons. However, if it's compared to an epic stage weapon, it's definitely far inferior. However, there are always exceptions. Just like the best offensive pet, Thunder God General, if it possesses the ability of Thunder God Augmentation, the lightning power it produces will be able to stand head and shoulders above its peers. It's the same with Overlord Snake. The typical Overlord Snake isn't strong, but if you have a mutated Overlord Snake, there is a possibility of it having the talent skill Ever Victorious. With this skill, Overlord Spear will be able to penetrate most objects. Even the typical epic creature can't withstand its sharpness. It's a pity that mutated Overlord Snakes are very rare, and the mutated Overlord Snakes with Ever Victorious are even rarer. Our family had hired people to grind in the snake cavern for 6 months before we obtained an Overlord Snake with Ever Victorious. And that's under the circumstances of having excellent luck. Now, that mutated Overlord Snake is one of our store's crown jewels. It's not for sale, but if you want it, I can make the decision to sell it to you. But I must warn you, it's very expensive. How much is it? Zhou Wen asked. 10 million. Luo Xuan named the price. It's indeed very expensive. I can't afford it. Zhou Wen shook his head. There's nothing we can do about it. An Overlord Snake's level isn't considered high, but it's very rare for it to have Ever Victorious. Furthermore, we got someone to specially incubate it. If you want it, the person needs to sacrifice his own cultivation level and damage his body to transfer Overlord Snake. That will require a huge sum of money as well, said Luo Xuan. Zhou Wen nodded. Everyone wanted the good stuff. Although their levels were about the same, the high price was understandable. Zhou Wen couldn't afford Overlord Snake, but Luo Xuan's words reminded him that even though he couldn't afford it, he could try to grind one at Snake Cavern. Snake Cavern was near Old Dragon Cave. Zhou Wen had heard Song Zia mention it before, but he hadn't paid much attention to it back then. Besides, Song Zia didn't know that mutated Overlord Snake had the Ever Victorious skill. After separating from Luo Xuan, Zhou Wen transferred Gu Dian's money to him. Zhou Wen had already added him as a friend when he entered the Xuanwen Club. After Gu Dian received the money, he only replied with 2 words, got it. Zhou Wen contacted Huang Ji again and confirmed some matters regarding the game. In the end, he confirmed his investment of 1.5 million. This investment was split into 2 tranches. The initial investment was 500,000. After Huang Ji completed a demo, he would fund him with the remaining 1 million investment. After returning to his dorm, Zhou Wen took out his mysterious phone and went to Snake Cavern. There were python-like snakes everywhere. Legendary Overlord Snakes had peerless strength and were considered top-notch legendary creatures. Furthermore, they lived in groups with numerous numbers. Typical legendary students wouldn't dare enter Snake Cavern. Zhou Wen naturally didn't have any qualms. He summoned his group of companion beasts and wreaked havoc in Snake Cavern. Soon, Zhou Wen understood why Overlord Snakes were so expensive. He had killed nearly 100 of them, but not a single Overlord Snake egg dropped, much less a mutated one. In the next few days, other than studying at Wang Mingyuon's place, Zhou Wen spent the rest of his time grinding the Overlord Snakes. However, he had nothing to show for. Over the past few days, he had only obtained an ordinary Overlord Snake egg. He managed to encounter a mutated Overlord Snake, but nothing dropped. It's no wonder Luo Xuan said that they were extremely lucky to have a mutated Overlord Snake egg drop after 6 months. Zhou Wen thought of the matter of luck and thought of Wang Lu. With Wang Le's luck, if she were to be taken to the snake cavern, she might be able to have a mutated overlord snake egg drop. However, Zhou Wen had no intention of seeking help, so all he could do was continue grinding. After repeatedly grinding, Zhou Wen nearly vomited when he saw the snake. Ding! Zhou Wen killed another mutated overlord snake. Suddenly, he heard a crisp sound as a black snake egg dropped and landed on the ground. Mutated overlord snake egg. Zhou Wen was delighted as he hurriedly got the blood-colored avatar to pick it up. Then, he prayed inwardly, please let it have the ever-victorious skill. If I keep grinding, I'll go hysterical. Article 239 of 1597. Mutated Overlord Snake, Legendary. Life Providence, Born Overlord. Strength, 19. Speed, 16. Constitution, 18. Primordial Energy, 15. Talent Skill, Death Coil. Companion Form, Spear. It doesn't have ever victorious. Zhou Wen was very disappointed. Although the mutated Overlord Snake stats were not bad, it was useless without the ever victorious skill. After putting away the mutated Overlord Snake, Zhou Wen had no choice but to continue grinding at Snake Cavern. He had to get the mutated Overlord Snake with ever victorious to drop no matter what. Boom. As Zhou Wen was grinding the Overlord Snake, he suddenly felt his house shake violently as though an earthquake was happening. Zhou Wen hurriedly exited the game and rushed out of the building to see what was happening. By the time he rushed out, Jing and Wang Lu were already standing in the yard. Furthermore, the two of them were looking up into the sky as though they were looking at something. Wasn't it an earthquake? Why are they looking up at the sky? Zhou Wen also looked up at the sky and was alarmed by what he saw. Up above, there were crystalline silk crisscrossed like a huge net that covered the entire sky. Perhaps not just Sunset College, but all of Luong. And on the net, there was a spider with 8 eyes that resembled jade. It kept spewing out spiderwebs. A breakout creature? Zhou Wen was alarmed. The spider was so huge that the web it spewed out nearly covered the whole of Luong. Just its aura alone meant that its level was definitely not low. At this moment, an attack aircraft appeared in the sky and launched an assault on the spider and spiderweb. However, the web moved and wrapped around the attack aircraft. The attack aircraft immediately stuck to the web and exploded very quickly. The flames created by the explosion failed to destroy the spider's web. The bullets and shells fired by the plane were also stuck to the spiderweb, making them seem completely useless. The spider in the sky let out a silent roar, but Truth Listener's ability allowed Zhou Wen to hear the strange shriek. Then, many ventilation holes in the spider's abdomen opened up. When they opened and closed, white spheres were spat out which landed in various locations. 2 of them landed in the direction of Sunset College. Zhou Wen focused his gaze, and only when the sphere was close did he realize that it wasn't a sphere. Instead, there were countless white spiders entangled together, making them look like a sphere. Just as they were about to land on the ground, the sphere exploded, causing a sea of spiders to land everywhere in Sunset College. Instantly, the entire school was filled with spiders. All teachers and students, may I have your attention? Please eradicate the invading spiders. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill, the school's announcement system urgently sounded. Epic stage counselors had already streaked across the air, killing many spiders that had yet to land. However, there were too many spiders, and there were still many that landed throughout the school. Quite a number of spiders had fallen into Four Seasons Garden. There was one not far from Zhou Wen and company. The spider was snow white in color and its hair was white. Its claws looked like translucent jade, and it was bigger than a human, but it didn't look terrifying. Instead, it looked like a furry toy. Jing and Wang Lu were still sizing up the spider out of curiosity when Zhou Wen summoned the Overlord Snake and thrust forward with penetrating pierce. After the battle in the yin-yang world, Zhou Wen was instinctively wary of dimensional creatures. Regardless of their looks, he had to first ensure that he wasn't being threatened. Zhou Wen's penetrating pierce only managed to cover half the distance when the spider spat out a strand of web that wrapped around the Overlord spear. Then, with a flick of its head, Zhou Wen felt a powerful force surge towards him, making him feel like he couldn't hold the spear. He hurriedly tightened his grip on his spear as the man and spider were locked in a stalemate. Zhou Wen was momentarily unable to pull the spider over. Into. Jing quietly summoned a long sword that dazzled with divine light. She then slashed at the spider. The spider spat out another strand of silk. When the sharp sword beam touched the silk, it ended up stuck as well. It left the 3 of them shocked. To have a power that allowed a spiderweb silk to cling to a sword beam was somewhat terrifying. The crux of the matter was that Zhou Wen and company didn't know if the spider was a dimensional creature or a puppet summoned by the spider in the sky. They felt a headache coming on. The spider's mouth kept spewing webs, trying to immobilize the trio. Soon, the webs covered a large area. Wang Lu summoned a whip, but just as she lashed it out, it was stuck in the spider's web. She couldn't pull it back no matter how hard she tried. In the sky, an epic expert had already flown over on a flying bird. He slashed a stunning sword beam at the spider, but despite having the power to slice through a mountain, it ended up stuck to the spider's web the moment it made contact with it. It was unable to move forward and vanished without a trace moments later. After the spider's silk bound the flying bird, it strangled the bird into two like blade-like steel silk. There were already 5 epic experts from the military, but despite using all sorts of abilities, they were unable to do anything to the huge spider in the sky. From time to time, it would spit out spider spheres that scattered across the city, causing the entire city to fall into a panic. Wang Lu and Jing were also attempting to fight the spider, but to no avail. Their attacks were blocked by spider webs, making it impossible to pose a threat to the spider. Wen snapped a picture of the spider with his phone, hoping to see if he could obtain its information so as to find a way to kill it. However, the information he obtained left him somewhat disappointed. The information only mentioned that it was a sky spider puppet, so it didn't look like a dimensional creature, but a puppet formed from the spider's powers. Wen summoned the banana fan and fanned a grand yin wind at the spider. The cold wind tore through the spider web and swept it over the spider's body. Instantly, the spider flew up and slammed into a tiny building in front, causing the walls to crack. An icy glint flashed in Jing's eyes as she grabbed the opportunity to pierce the spider's body with her sword beam. Boom! The spider's body exploded and it immediately perished. Wen, your fan is very useful. Let's quickly finish off the other spiders to prevent the other students from being harmed, Wang Lu said to Wen, overjoyed. However, Wen wasn't as optimistic as Wang Lu. The number of spiders that came raining down was just too many. It was already difficult for them to deal with them, so how would ordinary citizens cope? It was likely that Luang City was already facing an apocalyptic scene. Before the trio could rush out of Four Seasons Garden, they saw other special admission students battling the spiders. They weren't much different from Wen and company. The attacks were of little use against the spider puppets, so it was extremely difficult to fight them. Article 240 of 1597. Chapter 240 Chaos of the Sky Spider. None of the special admission students of Sunset College were weak. Although they were unable to kill the spider, they still used various methods and abilities to deal with the spider. They were not in danger at all. However, with the increasing number of spiderwebs surrounding them, the amount of space they and their companion beasts could move in became restricted. The battle became somewhat difficult. 4 or 5 spiders spewed out spider silk in Four Seasons Garden. Bright, crystalline spiderwebs could be seen everywhere. A companion beast had already been stuck to one, preventing it from struggling. Having already discovered the spider's weakness from her previous battle, Jing stabbed forward like a bolt of lightning, instantly pinning a spider to the ground. This was the first time Wen had seen Jing fight seriously. Her swordplay was extremely intense, and each strike carried a dazzling glow, as though the void had been penetrated as well. Wen immediately recognized the primordial energy art that Jing used. It was no doubt the sun strafe art. Her sword techniques were somewhat extraordinary, and although they looked simple, each strike made them look extremely gorgeous. The sword flashes were like dazzling divine beams. She was so powerful that she looked as good as Lance. It was just that she and Lance used 2 completely different styles. Lance's technique was unparalleled, but Jing's every strike was like a bolt of lightning. If she could kill her opponent with 1 strike, she definitely wouldn't require a second attack. I deserved losing back then. With Jing's strength, Wen was indeed no match for her back then. Seeing that Jing could deal with the spiders in Four Seasons Garden, Wen immediately rushed out and saw that there were indeed spiders spewing out spider silk outside. A student was stuck to the spider web as the spider crawled towards him. Wen raised his left hand and chopped down with Astral Slash Blade. The blade aura transformed into thin threads that sliced through the spider web. The remnant forces continued on and sliced the spider into 2. The schoolmate was still in shock. Before he could thank him, Wen had already rushed elsewhere. There were many experts on campus. Besides the epic counselors, there were also quite a number of students who could kill the spiders. The spiders in the school were quickly subdued. All students, may I have your attention? All students who have the ability to kill spiders, please enter the city immediately to aid the military. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. All students who participate in the hunting of spiders will be rewarded with credits. The broadcast rang again. In fact, Wen had already run to the school's entrance and ridden the mutated lotus flower ant out of the school. The situation in the city was indeed much worse than the school. From afar, Wen could see the intertwined spiderwebs in the middle of buildings. The city looked like a spider forest with webs everywhere. Many citizens had already been stuck to the spiderwebs. Quite a number of people had already been killed. The military were firing with their assault rifles in all directions. However, the effects looked limited. It was only possible for them to kill a spider after several consecutive shots hit the target. Moreover, the spiders moved very agilely and they were protected by the webs. When a bullet hit the web, it was stuck and had its effects limited. A mother carrying a child was bound by a spider web and was left hanging in the air, suspended in the middle of the building. They were just seconds from having the spider pounce at them. The eyes of the soldiers below were bloodshot, but they didn't dare fire. It was too close to the mother and son. If they shot, they might accidentally hit the innocent. Just as the spider was about to bite the mother and son, a figure flashed across the sky. The spider web and the spider were split into 2. The duo who fell were grabbed by the figure before landing safely on the ground. The soldiers came over to rescue the mother and son, leading them to seek refuge. A soldier asked Zhou Wen, "Are you a student at Sunset College?" "Yes." Zhou Wen nodded slightly. "Please provide assistance to the Duke of Zhou Temple. That area has become a spider disaster zone and is spreading outwards," the soldier said to Zhou Wen. "All right," Zhou Wen replied before riding the mutated lotus flower ant towards the Duke of Zhou Temple. The person that worshipped at Duke of Zhou Temple was Ji Dan. He was King Wu of Zhao's younger brother, had been regent twice, and helped King Wu of Zhou in clinching victory at the Battle of Muyi. He was also involved in the establishment of rites and the creation of music, earning him a consecration from future descendants. Zhou Wen stormed through and killed several spiders on the way and rescued some citizens. However, along the way, many citizens had already turned into corpses. They looked as if they had been sucked dry as they hung on a spider web attached to skyscrapers. Just one breakout creature can cause such a disaster. If the various dimensional zones are unable to trap those dimensional creatures, what will the world become? Zhou Wen felt that his strength was minute. The battle in the sky continued as a few epic stage experts rushed over. In the sky, they were fighting the sky spider, but the situation didn't look good. No one could pose a threat to the sky spiders. Instead, their companion beasts were stuck to the spider webs. No matter how much they struggled, they were unable to escape. "Zhou Wen, are you going to the Duke of Zhou Temple as well?" Zhang Ziya charged over from another direction and happened to meet Zhou Wen. The thin sword in his hand was unbelievably fast. Wherever the sword passed, the spiders would have their foreheads instantly penetrated by a sword beam, leaving only a wound that resembled a needle hole, accentuating their deaths. "There was a soldier who said that it needs reinforcements," Zhou Wen said as he tore open the spider webs. "Me too. Let's go together." Zhang Ziya rushed over with his sword in hand. Zhou Wen followed. Soon, he met a few other students who had been invited by the military to reinforce the Duke of Zhou Temple. The military's epic powerhouses were rushing into the sky to fight the sky spider. If they didn't get rid of the sky spider as quickly as possible, the spiders that it spat out would be endless. All they could do was leave the spiders below to ordinary soldiers and some legendary military officers. Zhou Wen and the other students from Sunset College would become officers if they chose to join the army after graduation. There was no need for them to start off as enlistees. Usually, when the students were together, it was difficult to tell who was truly strong, but when it came to real battles, everything became obvious. Zhou Wen had never seen some of the powerful students in the school rankings before. A person like Song Zia was definitely not weaker than Wei Ji, the president of the student council. He could even be stronger, however, he didn't have a ranking. The pair of siblings from the Wu family were terrifying as well. Zhou Wen couldn't help but marvel at how many hidden dragons and crouching tigers there were at Sunset College. Just as they were about to arrive at Duke of Zhou Temple, Zhou Wen saw Hui Haifeng leading a group of people in a battle with the spiders. The surrounding soldiers were also watching the front lines as they fired crazily. They had yet to see the Duke of Zhou Temple, but the number of spiders ahead of them was uncountable. It was unknown how many of them were crawling out. "This city has become a spider's nest," Zhang Zia said. "Cut the crap. Hurry up and provide reinforcements. We can't hold out any longer." Hui Haifeng shouted. Zhou Wen, Zhang Zia, and the rest of the students rushed forward and blocked the swarm of spiders. It was a chaotic scene where they killed countless spiders. Yet, the number of spiders that charged out from the Duke of Zhou Temple remained constant. Article 241 of 1597.